Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of AUHSD Future Talks. I'm your host, Michael Matsuda, the superintendent of the Anaheim Union High School District. And as our 7,000 plus podcast listeners know, this show is dedicated to the future of education, not only for our students, but students across this country. And we've had many, many special and amazing people on this show. Today, though, we have one of our very own leaders, our assistant soup of the Education Division, Dr. Jaron Fried. Jaron, welcome again to the show.
Yes, it is great to be back with you, Mike, to be able to talk about the work that we're engaged in and the way that we can continue to transform educational opportunities for both our students and our families, but also help maybe even other districts do the same.
So Jaron is a homegrown leader. He's went to our schools, graduated of Catella High School, and has come back, and he was a teacher, an amazing teacher. But really, what struck me, Jaron, is your abilities to lead as a site principal, both at the junior high and the high school level, before ascending into the cabinet position. So, and your work speaks for itself. Not only were you able to lead these two schools, but doing so in a way and a stance onto what we call ontological humility. You're truly a servant leader. We're very proud to have you in the cabinet as part of our district leadership. So I'm going to get right into it, because this particular segment is all about the role of the principal and how the principal can help transform schools in support of school vision. The late business leader Russell Acuff famously said, "It's better to do the right thing wrong than the wrong thing right." What does that mean for you and us, Jaron?
Well, and that's a great quote by Russell Acuff. And I think about as school leaders, as educators, we're often faced with answering the question, how can we better help our students achieve? And when I think about that quote, doing the right things wrong versus the wrong things right, so many schools, so many districts focus on student achievement in terms of a test score, right? Helping our students achieve so they do better on the statewide national tests. And for us, I know there's a belief, and again, not that these assessments aren't important. Of course, they're important, but if we focus all of our attention in reducing or eliminating the achievement gap based on a score, that in our minds, or at least in my mind, is an example of doing potentially the wrong thing right. Because as we know, that assessment doesn't necessarily lead to meaningful jobs. It doesn't lead to purposeful lives. It doesn't even indicate or connect to a successful college career. And for us, if we really think about doing the right things, whether wrong or right, the right things, it's looking and really reevaluating the North Star. So when we talk about student achievement in our district, we really see it through the lens of the Career Preparedness Systems Framework. We also call it a CPSF. And for us, if we can really focus, dive deep, and put forth our energy and efforts to what we believe are the right drivers, our North Star, making sure students have a relevant, meaningful experience in classrooms. If we can make sure that what is being taught and learned in class are connected, not just to the content, which we would call potentially the technical skills, but also the 5 C's, those soft skills, those power skills that we know are a game changer in being successful in life. Those are the 5 C's: communication, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and perhaps the most important, compassion and kindness. But it's also finding a way to elevate their voice, their purpose, their identity, who they are and how they fit. And when we can instruct and create experiences in the classroom that allow students to navigate through those 3 elements, we're positioning our students so they can then access meaningful jobs, lead a purposeful, meaningful life. And for us, those right drivers, that's the game changer. We've seen firsthand, and especially in these last few years during the pandemic, how rapidly our world has changed, how jobs have changed. And if we go back to teach the test or the traditional drivers, I really feel like we're doing a disservice for our students, that we're not preparing them for the world that's right before them. And our drivers, the CPSF frameworks, the way that we look at and approach instruction, that is going to do right by our students and position them where they can thrive no matter what occurs in their life. And I do want to give a shout out, because this isn't easy work. And our principals, our teachers, our counselors, our psychologists, all the different players within our system have done just a remarkable job in responding to the needs that we're seeing and the assets that our students bring. And as a result, we're actually getting some great traction and moving in this direction.
So too often, Jaron, as you know, districts adopt on paper a North Star that sounds really great to the public. So, and everybody takes a picture and there's a poster made and stuff like that. And then you have teachers, singleton teachers, who might go into project-based learning training or MICVA, civic engagement, and get all excited because they think they're also supporting the North Star. But where things get lost, I think, in terms of implementation in the classroom is the role of the principal. Could you talk a little bit about why the role of the principal is so important in school transformation?
Well, I mean, let's state the obvious. As the principal, you're the leader of the school. You're the face of the school. The staff looks to you for direction, for vision, for support. And although we believe in shared leadership, and I know we'll talk about that in a little bit, the principal is the one who sets the conditions for the school. They're the ones who can create the space where teachers feel supported to innovate, to bring in civic engagement, to bring in teachable moments. It is the principal who creates the systems and the structures so work can be sustained. The principal is absolutely critical in doing this work, but so too are the players within the system, the teachers, the counselors, the classified staff, the other admin. They're critical, but the principal sets those conditions. They're the ones who model what it is that you want to see at the school. So, when we think about the role of a principal, are they top down or are they operating through a flat governance? Do they believe in, I know Michael Fullan's book, which is something we've used, do they believe in decisional capital? Are they really getting the input from the players, the different players within the system, because they're the ones who are trenched with or asked to do this work? Getting their input and their opinions, their mindset is so important. And a principal to be able to navigate that complexity of running a school and bringing the different players to the table and allowing them to be part of the decision making, that also creates ownership and commitment to the North Star. It also allows for more of a collaborative team, cohesive approach in accomplishing those goals. So the principal is the one who creates that environment and sets those conditions. So that's, in a nutshell, why they're so important. And we're blessed. We have amazing principals who are working to create those conditions on each of our campuses.
Well, that didn't happen by itself, right? Because we made sure, and we are making sure, all of us are aligned in terms of what we call the it, we, and the I. The it being the vision, core values of the district. The we is sort of interrelational, and the I is personal. Who are you? Are you aligned to this North Star? And we also use a metaphor called three-dimensional chess or three-level chess. It's a systemness that Michael Fullan talks about. So the first level being your site at your school site, the second level, the relationship between the school site and the district office. And the third level is the community, very political level. That's where the board operates, the cabinet. So you can have this aspirational North Star on that third level, but then sometimes things get lost in translation at the district office and then certainly at the site level. Can you talk about the systems and structures at the site levels that need to be operational and functional for things to get done, to show alignment with the North Star?
Yeah, so first and foremost, and again, we just talked about the importance of the principal. It starts with a cabinet. The principal has a cabinet surrounding him or her, where there are other administrators, it's their counselors, it's other teacher leaders that are part of that cabinet, to really look at the operational aspects of the school. But within that structure, you have a second layer, which is the site leadership team. The site leadership team is really taking those core teacher leaders. And when I say core, it's not just English, math, history, and science, although those are the core. It's taking other leaders on the campus to really look at the vision. And we're fortunate where almost all of our schools have gone through a visioning process where, thankfully, it is aligned to our North Star. Matter of fact, it helped feed our district vision, which is to create a better world through the LMRU, right? Which really summarizes beautifully the work that all of our schools have done to establish on their own sites. But the SLT, or the site leadership team, is so important because, as I referenced, that decisional capital, they're the ones looking at the data, which is not just the traditional data, but it's also what we call that street data, the local surveys, the anecdotal data, the things that are observed, where they can make decisions as a team, right, to own what it is they're doing, and then they build capacity from within. So then those department leads, teacher leaders can go back to the larger staff, build capacity to do that work. That's an essential function that needs to be in place. But then I also think about the systems we have as a site that support some of our students who are furthest from opportunity, our plurilingual or English learner students, our students with disability, and our foster youth. We have district level task force or systems in place that the sites have also created in that alignment, so that there's a support structure and mechanism and an accountability structure between the district and the site to make sure the work is not only happening, but the support to help it happen in a meaningful way. And I can't underscore the importance of those systems, because that's where the work is sustained. That's where the capacity is built. A principal is one person, right? They set the conditions, but if they can do a masterful job in building capacity and creating the ownership of what it is the school is trying to accomplish based on that North Star, the principals can come and go. But a lot of the folks at the sites, when they're given that empowerment, which is what it is, they're empowered to lead this work, and they're given the supports to be able to lead that work. The work will endure long after the principal leaves.
So I want to make it clear, Jaron, we go back to the North Star. The North Star needs to shift from just focus on test scores to instructional practices supporting the whole child.
Yes.
We call it the 5 C's. Some people call it deeper learning or 21st century skills, as you mentioned. And our North Star also connects that to the development of student agency and voice in the classroom. This is not after school programs. This is stuff going on in the classrooms. And I think that's one reason why we are now a state demonstration site for the state of California, one of 3 out of 1,000 districts. So kudos to you and your team and all of the folks out, all the teachers and principals out there. So how, going back to this sort of everything focused on instructional practices in the classroom, and you talked about the role of the principal, could you also expand on the role of the principal, not only supporting these structures, but like, release time for teachers, department chairs, impact on the master schedule? Those are the technical nuts and bolts things that need to happen to support our amazing teachers in the classroom. Could you share the connection there?
Yeah, so one of the challenges that we've heard loud and clear from staff across the district over the last few years is there's an alignment with the vision and the why and what is it we're trying to accomplish, but the challenge has been the time, right? Finding the time to be able to implement and actually do this work. And so part of the strategic approach that we've had as a district and our sites have had is creating and carving out time during the school day, during the work day, to allow our teacher leaders to do this work, to build capacity, to learn with and from each other, and to support one another. That has been essential. So yeah, the principal, the SLT or the site leadership team release time has been essential in building capacity around our capstone. The way that we as a district choose to measure and assess authentically our North Star, right? Where it's through the lens of performance task assessments and project-based learning. And that time has been essential for teachers during their late starts, during professional learning communities, to build out those PTAs or performance task assessments and projects. It's also being strategic in the way that we build our master schedule. So it's a schedule that works for our students and not the other way around. So it could be making some strategic decisions in terms of where things are offered within the schedule, so students aren't having to make a choice between this or that. If we can be strategic in the way we build our master schedule, ideally a student doesn't have to choose between the two, they can do both, right? So those are things that the principal has influence over in building out the structure and the system. And it's also, we ask our teachers to be mindful of looking for that student talent as like scouts, if you will. Principals are doing the same thing with our staff, right? They may see something in a teacher that others may not see. And how can you tap that skill or that leadership and bring it out in someone where they're empowered and inspired to now do something different because no one's ever asked them to do that before. We call it with our students when we look at civic engagement that students aren't apathetic, they're often uninvited. Well, we have the same dynamic sometimes happening with our staff. How can we as principals and as site leaders really invite teachers and counselors and other staff to get more involved in something, seeing that potential within someone and drawing it out? That is also a skill that we want to build within our principals. So again, the schools are empowered to do the work that needs to be done.
So one of the reasons why I think we've been selected a demonstration site is because of the amazing work our teachers are doing in the classroom. We call it sort of shared leadership at the sites, as opposed to a more traditional view of the union and administration in a shared governance stance, right? So what we're trying to do, and I want to also put a shout out to our union leadership, is coming to a common identification of what a teacher leader in the classroom means, and all of the systems and support structures that that teacher and those teachers need, with the union and the administration working together to support that. Can you elaborate on this differentiation between shared governance and shared leadership, and how we feel that it's getting closer to a convergence?
Yeah, so and I agree. I think a huge shout out needs to go to our, in this case, we're talking about teachers, a huge shout out to our union leads who have been incredibly supportive of the work in our North Star. There's an alignment there. It's connected to our even our community school approach, which of course centers around the 4 pillars, but also a deep focus on instruction. When we think about shared governance, it is the relationships and the support structures that we have in place with our union friends and our sites in working together to support what's happening at the school, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. But when you talk about the shared leadership, I think it takes it to another layer where they're at the table, they're making decisions together, they're building instructional practices to really support our students. You talked about these examples, and I think about our MAC, our Magnolia Agri-Science Community Center, which is a response that was generated because of our student voice, right? Identifying a local issue that we live in food deserts, and there's not a lot of healthy options, food options for our students and families to access. So we had this big space behind Magnolia, and because of the student voice, because we were able to leverage one-time COVID dollars, we built an outdoor learning lab that now has influenced not only as a civic engagement project to impact local community needs, but now you have teacher leaders who are empowered because the principals support this leadership and allowing them the flexibility to bring in these teachable moments in the classroom, still connected to the content. So we're not dismissing the standards. We're not sacrificing the charge of a school, but empowering our teachers and equipping them with the skills to be able to do just that, to bring in these issues that our students care about, but doing it in a way where the teachers aren't influencing the students in terms of what they think or what they feel, but giving kids our students the ability to navigate through that and develop their own positions, their own opinions and thoughts on the matter, backed on the inquiry that they do, right? And you're seeing that through our MAC lessons, right? Where students are learning about the food deserts. They're creating soapbox speeches or our AUHSD talks and a call to action to do something about it. That's an example of teacher leadership and shared leadership, where they're a part of this bigger picture, and then teachers as a result are empowered to do that. And the principal creates the space for that to happen. And then what we're seeing is because of that work, it's starting to spread across different schools. So it's no longer just a Magnolia thing. We're seeing it happen at Catella and other schools where they're also bringing these kinds of lessons into the classroom. And our students are loving it, right? This is engaging, more relevant, more meaningful. It's connected to our North Star, the CPSF that I mentioned earlier. So it's this convergence of all these things that we believe in happening in the classroom. And I would argue this is the example community school approach, right? Where it's happening in the classroom, but it's also connected to the things happening outside of the classroom.
You know, it's too often outside of our district, and I'm not saying that we're totally in sync between our union leadership and our admin leadership, but we are getting closer.
Yeah.
Because I think both of us recognize that public schools are under threat. There are outside political forces that want to defund public schools, that want to dismiss teachers. And I think that's a huge critical crisis for the United States, a democracy, and students' belief in this thing called the American dream, because education is so vital to that. Can you speak for a moment on the relationship between student voice and agency, not only to jobs, but to what America stands for in terms of being the leading democracy in the world?
Yeah, that is one of our core values, that schools exist to support and strengthen the student voice and agency through the lens of democracy. That students are problem solvers. There is urgency. We're seeing before our eyes jobs change. We're seeing schooling under threat. There's this concept of going back to the basics, and we of course teach the content, right? That's not something we sacrifice, but the urgency is our students are our country's future, right? We only go as far as they're going to go as they matriculate up through the system, and to empower and equip them with these skills to help them find their voice and their identity, who they are and how they fit in this world, is essential. That is essential core, I think, value of just what public schools were built upon. I think it's our charge as an institution to give our students this opportunity. They are going to be the decision makers, and I say they are. I also say it in present tense. We have seen our students actively make impact on local community issues like while they're students. It's not something that they're working to when they get older, but we're seeing our students empowered as citizens now. The urgency, I think, comes where our students are, when we say our vision is to create a better world through the unlimited you, right? Of course, that applies to, I think, anyone within our system, our staff, our parents, our community partners. But that is about that fifth C, that compassion, that giving back, that part of our charge. Of course, we want our students to land meaningful jobs where they're making great money and they're able to take care of themselves and their family. But we also want our students thinking about how they can pay it forward, how they can do something that's going to better the community that they live in. And that's the power of democracy, right? That when we create those experiences and those opportunities and through that civic mindset, our students will be positioned to do just that. And there is a sense of urgency. Right now, more and more students, I think, across the country have become more disconnected with school. We're seeing research and data that not only is enrollment declining because of just costs like in Orange County and people moving out because it's just expensive to be here, families are having less students. But when you look at the average daily attendance rate and students across the state are attending school at a lesser rate too, the ones that are engaged with us, I think for our district, even though we're faced with that as well, we're seeing it at a lesser level. Like our decline is less and our ADA reduction is less. We still are faced with it, but it's less. And I think that speaks to the engagement that we're bringing into the classroom. And it's a huge shout out to our teachers and our sites and the work they're doing. But when it's meaningful, when it's relevant, students are empowered and they're equipped to do something with the educational learning. That's I think the difference, right? It's applied learning. So going back to our original question, the North Star and closing the achievement gap, when we're focused on a test score or proving the data through that lens, that's not engaging and meaningful for students, right? The reality is our content, it's here. Students can access content on their phone. But when we teach them how to apply that content in meaningful ways, the students see an endless opportunity before them to really change and impact the world that they live in. And that is the urgency, that if we don't do something with it, we're going to graduate a lot of students who are not taught to think. They're not taught to work with other people. They're not taught to problem solve. That's a huge issue. So that's why this is so important.
And we need to practice that. So we have had an early look at Michael Fullan's new book, Principle 2.0, and he brings in, he doubles down on systemness, but he brings in this concept of spirit work and the science of collaboration, the ability to care for students, staff, and communities, but using this collaboration, whether it's steering committees or various committees, but that people are centered in love and compassion. What is your response to this driver, this key to implementing a driver, spirit work?
Yeah, I mean, it's essential. I mean, think about, we brought Capturing Kids' Hearts to our district, right? With the idea to build stronger, healthier communities. When you think about our community schools approach, one of the things they say is we're stronger and we go farther together, right? It is a belief that in collaboration and this EQ, right? That fifth C that we talk about, that compassion and kindness and character, that is an essential foundation in really creating the conditions to do the work that we're doing. So I would agree, the spirit work, when people work together and they're charged with solving problems together, when there's decisional capital, shared responsibility in making this work real, there's a deeper layer of commitment in making it happen. And so it doesn't fall upon one person. Again, we talk about the principal creating the conditions, but the principal can't do it all. They need a team with them to be able to do this.
Talking about compassion and kindness, our fifth C, but at a cultural level, because a lot of this has to do with culture of schools, culture within departments, the culture of the students and families as well. So he also brings in this term, contextual literacy, and it's talking about understanding the culture that you're in, and that leaders have to be contextually literate to deeply understand and to frame things in terms of moving forward. Can you comment on this term, contextual literacy?
Yeah, and that goes back to that third dimensional chess that you were referencing earlier. For the principal, it's the sophistication and the skill set to be able to truly understand and be aware of your current reality, right? Peter Senge talks about this, the current reality versus the perceived reality, right? So how do we get our principals and their teams to really be cognizant of the environment in which they're working? Because if you are literate in the context that you serve, you're going to be more mindful and aware of the decisions that you're making, how things are being framed in implementing initiatives or tasks. That's essential, and that's where the principal has to rely on that shared leadership, getting the feedback from the teachers in the classroom, the classified staff, that SLT I referred to. That's all going to be foundational in helping to understand how they move the work forward.
So that's where the issues of implicit bias would come in, cultural
Yes.
competency, and understanding your own blind spots, not only as an individual, but within your leadership group. And I think ultimately it comes down to whether you're asset driven or deficit driven in terms of your mindset. In the few moments that we have left, could you talk about how our response has been to this notion of uh, the the learning loss from the pandemic? I mean, that term learning loss is very deficit driven. But what is you're the leader of our ed division? What is your response to that?
Well, first of all, yeah, we have not referenced learning loss. I mean, that's not something that we believe in. We actually believe that our students came out of this pandemic stronger and better people as a result of what they had to go through and persevere through. As I think about our instructional program and what we're trying to really build as a district with our sites and our teams, right? We've really empowered our sites. I think about the Capstone as a perfect example. The Capstone is a collection of performance tasks and projects and different activities that our students have been engaged in, that our teachers have generated and worked with to develop, that really meets the needs of our students, so that way education is working for them and not the other way around. It is done in a way where it really highlights and exacerbates the assets that our students bring to the classroom, as opposed to what they don't bring. And I think for us, in that shared leadership model that we were referencing, when you allow students the space to talk about the things that they care about, to bring into the classroom the things that they're interested in doing, and you do it in a way where the teacher, through their sophistication, connects it back to the content, the students thrive. And we're seeing that. We're seeing, if you look at even our traditional data, we're outperforming our demographics. If you look at our local indicators from our higher ed partners at UCI and Cal State Fullerton, Cypress College, Fullerton College, our students are outperforming and out-persisting their neighbors in schools, districts where on paper you would think that they would be outperforming us. So it just shows that when we can take an asset-based approach, a relevant and meaningful approach to education, and really make sure that the work we're having students engage in is relevant and meaningful and connected to the things that they care about, our students are going to thrive. And that is that asset-based approach. That is that approach to kindness and compassion. I think also there's a lot of work being done as our ed division looks at how we can be more intentional in creating more culturally relevant materials, so that way students see themselves in the curriculum. So it's allowing the students to really visualize and see themselves not just in the curriculum, but see themselves moving forward. Like, I could be a scientist, I could be a historian, right? That's what we want our students to really embrace. And I think we've done a lot of intentional work. We still have more work to do, but I'm really, really proud of the great work our staff has done. And I think with some urgency to get us to a place where we're out in front leading, which is another reason why we're one of these 3 demonstration districts as a state. Because of the work that we've done in the classroom to really support, position our students, but empower our students to really be the next leaders of this country.
Wow, Jaron, that's quite a mic drop. And I was looking forward when I opened up Principal 2.0 to see your picture on the top of the cover of that, because as our audience, some of our audience knows, I've never had the privilege of being a principal. I consider myself a teacher. I know you consider yourself a teacher ultimately too, but a teacher's teacher. But in my opinion, Jaron, you are a principal's principal. So I'm so glad and proud of your work and in your leadership, especially in these urgent times, not only for our district, but for this country. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Mike. It's been great to be with you.